You're tuning in to Neurodiversity, a podcast for neurodivergent adults and the people who love them. Please note that this podcast does not substitute medical or professional diagnosis and advice. Hey y'all, welcome back to season 2 of Neurodiversity. So it's been a long time coming. If you have followed me since Neurodiversity's inception, you know it's been about 2 years since I released the first season. I know that's not typical for podcast product management timelines, but I'm not a typical individual. So I'm doing the best I can with what I got, right? Mariah said it best. And so with this, so 2022, I released the first season. And then 2023, I relocated to California and LA. So I just really didn't have a lot of space to even re-record that sort of thing, as reasonably expected. And then I started recording last year in 2024. Like in the fall, I believe, the fall of 2024, I started recording season 2. It's now the beginning of 2025, and I am just getting this out to you. And you know what? The old me would really be embarrassed about my speed in which I released this. I'm honestly just happy that I'm here. I'm happy that I took it slower. I did it in sections. I didn't feel so overwhelming like before, where I would put out this date and then I'm like scrambling to like rush to meet that date. That just didn't feel good for me. That didn't align with my values and how I like to create art and how I like to just show up honestly in the world. Like I want to show up like rested and grounded and even killed and not in a rat race to produce so that algorithms can deem me worthy. So I say all that to say, as you watch this season, like this intro season is recent. Like it's currently, what is today, January 30th, 2025. So you'll see other episodes of me in like different locations. I've moved so much in the last few years. So those are like older videos. You might hear me say some things that might be like a little outdated to the time. I know in the second episode, I talk a lot about my manifestations and wanting to, make this podcast do numbers. And one is self-serving, totally. I need to eat, sleep. I want my basic needs met. I would like more than my basic needs met. I deserve a living wage, totally. So like self-serving. At the same time, making a living wage from this effort is really going to help me and help you or help others in other ways. So if I can get more revenue coming in this way, then I can offer more sliding scale services with therapy or diagnostic assessments or things like that. I can just put more content out and focus more on making this content. When I'm putting energy into one section of my life, I'm likely pulling from another section. And that's something I've had to learn over the years of I have limits, right? I have a human body that has limits. What a shocker. I would love to do more of this. I want to show up for you more consistently in this space. But I do need the support, and I'm just going to be honest about that. So, do your things if you feel compelled, like, subscribe, share, donate, super chats. I don't even know how that works. I don't know if you can super chat on this, but I'll figure it out. And when I do, yes, you can let me know. You can send me some super chats. But anyway, I'm going to move on from that. So season 2, one thing that's different about the season as well is that it's a bit more structured. So we have a topic and we are focusing on neurodivergence in the workplace. Last season, it was more of me consciously processing my own late diagnoses, sharing my experiences, and really defining some terminology so that we're on the same page about things. So that's what I put in season 1. It was kind of like what was on my mind. I wrote, I put it out. This time around, I really focused on the topic of work. And the reason why is because neurodivergent adults often struggle in the workplace. The majority of us have workplace struggles. It might be performance related, down to, we're underemployed or unemployed. And that is a discrepancy. Or I don't know if discrepancy is the right word. I'm blanking on the word that I want to say, but that's a part of our identity and how we're impacted by those identities. So you might say, okay, well, everyone might struggle with work a little bit. What do you mean? So neurodivergent adults, and in this series, I'm really going to focus on autism and ADHD. I'm going to be clear that those are not the only neurodivergent conditions. There are other ones, other neurodevelopmental conditions themselves. That's a category of diagnosable conditions, but also other conditions that make your brain or the brain deviate from normal standards, which normal is dog whistle for male white Protestants, in case you didn't know. Anyway, so yeah, I the normalcy I got on my Justice Hill and derailed my train of thought. Oh boy, I don't know if I'm gonna cut this out or not. We'll see. I might just leave it in for the authenticity. Um so yeah, like neurodivergent adults or neurodivergence, it also includes other conditions of like, PTSD, other things, schizophrenia that might make your brain deviate from what we think is normal. I don't have the capacity to give you all the stats and all the information on those specific diagnoses. To make things even more complicated, a lot of times these diagnoses don't exist in isolation. You typically have multiple co-occurring disorders, so even that impacts like rates and how things show up. So for my own sanity and yours, honestly, I'm going to narrow it down. We're going to talk about autism and ADHD. That's a lot of what I talk about is my ADHD experience. So not excluding that other people may fall into this category, but the numbers aren't representative of them. I just want to be clear on that. So if you feel compelled to focus on those other sides of neurodivergence and give us some statistics and your opinions, Godspeed. Yeah, so neurodivergent adults typically struggle at work in areas like social communication and language, how they're communicating with other people. Obviously, that's a criteria of the diagnosis itself. That's a criteria of autism itself. And that seems to follow. And also, sensory issues seem to be another really big aspect of work, in which contributes to the difficulties that neurodivergent adults, specifically autistic adults, but also ADHD adults and some others face in the workplace. So I did not. Oh my gosh, I did not turn my phone on silent in my recording. Rookie mistake. Rookie mistake. This is not season 2 energy. Crazy. Okay, anyway. So yeah, so that's what I'm gonna focus on. I'm gonna walk you through a couple of research publications. I'm not going to really walk you through it. I'm going to point out some excerpts from them to kind of set the stage of the disparities. That's the word I was looking for, not discrepancies, disparities. The disparities that neurodivergent people face in the workplace. So this first study here I want to show you, it is a 2021 published UK study in which they interviewed 238 autistic adults who have workplace experience. So I want to read a little bit of a snippet from here. And just a little side note, when it comes to research, we can really even get into the weeds about what kind of research is, ethical research. We can get into what sort of research meets like the gold standard of being peer reviewed, things like that. If it's quality research, like there are metrics to let you know, like if research is quality or not. I don't always have all the time. I often don't have the time to go through all the things that might give it like the seal that this is a super, what's the word I'm looking for, like the pinnacle of like research standard, right? But some things that I really do look for when I'm sharing research is one sample size. So if you give me a research study that was done on 15 people, I probably don't even want to hear about it because that's 15 people. Like let's at least get hundreds of people, we can start to see if these results are then maybe replicable in other areas in the future. That's one thing I look at. I like to look at diversity in studies when I have time, when it's possible. I also like to look at the methods and what sort of measures were taken to reduce like biases and other inconsistencies in the research. So I mostly pick longitudinal studies too. I love a longitudinal study. Like stalk somebody for most of their life and tell me what you found out, or a group of people. So anyway, I felt like this publication was pretty safe. I will say, like, it is UK based and maybe pretty heterogeneous or homogeneous. Do I know words? Do I know what they mean? Ugh. Yeah, it's probably pretty homogeneous. It's probably pretty fucking gay. Anyway, let me redo this clip. And so it says, employment is a desirable achievement for some autistic adults. Yet autistic individuals have the lowest employment rate of any disability group in the United Kingdom. Although current figures may be an underestimated due to those who do not disclose or who are not diagnosed. That's really important. Rewind that and read it back if you need to. The National Autistic Society estimates that only 32% of autistic adults are in any sort of paid work. That is less than half, y'all. Less than half of the people who are reported in any paid. So we're not even talking about like corporate. We're not even talking about like self-sufficient entrepreneurship, like any paid jobs. Only 32%. When compared with 47% of other disability groups and 80% employment for the non-disabled population. These numbers reflect a crisis of unemployment for autistic adults that must be addressed. The impact of unemployment can be severe. Research shows that employment not only improves quality of life for autistic folks, but also encourages personal dignity, reduces social isolation, and increases cognitive performance. Although many autistic person, although I'm sorry, rewind. Although every autistic person is unique, many may face obstacles throughout their employment journey, for the recruitment stage until well into their employment. For example, sensory sensitivities, sensitivities to certain types of lighting and noise can make the workplace environment challenging. And I forgot to say the EG. So those are just two examples of sensory sensitivities. There may be more. There are definitely more that people experience. Um, Social communication is another area in which autistic employees experience difficulties at work. Negatively perceived social communication behaviors, such as interrupting or abruptly terminating a conversation, have been linked to low job retention and workplace difficulties, particularly in interacting with colleagues. Social communication differences also appear to impact the process of seeking employment, with autistic adults frequently reporting difficulties with social interactions during job interviews. Big deal, super big deal. And I can totally relate to this. Like they said, throughout the stages of the employment journey, from interviews, from you got that position to keeping that position to getting along with coworkers and management. Um, Lots of anecdotal stories of my own that you'll hear about that throughout this podcast season. Yeah, I think that kind of speaks for itself. I want to show you another piece of research. So this next study is about ADHDers, focused on just people diagnosed with ADHD. So not autistics, not people with both ADHD, which I don't know if they really controlled for that per se, but I digress. Anyway, I will say that this is an old study. So these numbers that you're about to see in this table are outdated. The study was published in 2006, so almost 20 years ago. I decided to share it though, because this table here, this table two that they presented in their research, it's a great reflection of intersectionality. So let's get into it. So what this table is showing us is it's showing us the mean annual household income of the surveyed population. So this study surveyed 500, I believe it's 500. Where is that in? Yeah, okay. Yeah, 500 ADHD adults and 501 non-ADHD adults. So those are the non-ADHD adults are the neurotypical, neuronormative adults. That's the control group. So we're looking at, they surveyed these two groups and they're looking at their household income. And I think also, were they talking about job retention or just employment? They were just looking at, I think, maybe some employment experiences. But this table looks at the household income. So it is the mean annual household income of these two surveyed groups, the ADHD group and the non-ADHD group. Let's walk it back real quick just to, I don't know, what was that, elementary, middle school? We learned about mean, median, mode, right? So mean, median, and mode, these are types, these are ways that you can present averages. So when someone says like, oh, the average is blah, blah, blah. Well, how did they determine that average? Did they look at the mean? Did they look at the median? Or did they look at the mode? This is using the mode, or I'm sorry, no, that was a Floridian slip. This is using the mean to look at the annual household income averages. So what that means is that out of, the 500 ADHDers, whatever numbers that they gave, they then added up the sum of those numbers and then they divided it by 500. And that's going to give you the mean of these numbers. All right. So in the same way, if we're not doing it around research, we might look at something silly like how often do Americans go to Six Flags. I don't know. And let's just like make this easy. So let's say we surveyed 100 people, or let's say we surveyed 50 people, and the total number that we got with all of their responses. So, someone might have said they go to Six Flags once a year. Someone might have been like, I go to Six Flags 6 times a year. So whatever those responses are, we're going to add them all up. Let's say they equal 100. We would then divide that 100 by 50, and then our mean average is 2. Cool? Cool. All right. I'm not a math professor, but I think that's solid. You can go to Math YouTube if you have some discrepancies. Anyway, so this study, when we look at the overall household income, again, 2006, so these numbers are definitely changed, but ADHDers made on average $41,511, where non-ADHDers on average made $52,053. That is over a $10,000 difference. What could you do with $10,000 more in your year? So it further breaks it down by gender, which means no shocker here. We see female people making less, significantly less on the dollar. So I think the statistics on that is typically about like, is it 20% or 30%? I can't remember. I'm not percent, it's cent anyway. I'm not going to do that. I don't know the stats on that, but you can go look that up. Wage disparities amongst sex and gender, that sort of thing. So we see here that males with ADHD make more than females with ADHD. And then with both of these subsets of ADHDers making less than non-ADHDers. So males without ADHD were making significantly more than males with ADHD. Females with ADHD are making significantly less than females without ADHD. Okay. We can go into age, which I found this part fascinating. That for the ages of 18 to 24, the ADHDers make more. I thought that was so cool. And I think that why I think it's so cool is because it really reflects the lived experience of so many neurodivergent people that I've talked to in my practice, just in my work, colleagues, and my friends, and neurodivergent folks tend to flock together. So it really affects or reflects so many people's life experience that I hear. So when I talk to people about like their work experience or their public output, whether it's job, whether it is just how many responsibilities that they may have in that day. A lot of times when I'm asking people who are like in their late 20s and beyond, they reflect and they'll be like, oh my God, when I was 18, or when I was young, I can't believe I did X, Y, and Z. I can't believe I worked 80 hours a week. I can't believe that, I had all these jobs and I was just going from one job to the next job and I was barely sleeping. And I don't think I can do that anymore. And then like we really see this reflected in the data, whatever. And that's so, I just think that's so phenomenal. I think that's so cool to see here. Um, where at the 25 to 34 mark, we make significantly less money than we did when we were younger. So I think there's something really here that we could start to study. We could maybe use this as some lit research to start to study maybe a very universal or common, a super common burnout phase for ADHDers around their like mid 20s to mid 30s. I would be interested definitely in maybe some more research about that. I don't know if I'm going to do it, but just chatting for my nerds. So yeah, I think that's so interesting. And then it seems like we kind of, maybe figure things out a little bit as we get older and start earning more, but still significantly less than our non-ADHD counterparts, right? So even throughout the years, we're always making less money. All right, so now we got that intersection of age. We have our intersection of gender. Let's get into the intersection of race. I'm going to already say I don't like the way that it was just made white and other, but I mean, it's 2006. So we're going to roll with it, but this is poor reporting. Anyway, so white people on average are making about 10 grand more. This is white people with ADHD than non-white people with ADHD. And then, of course, we still see the trend that non ADHDers who are white are making more than ADHDers who are white. Non ADHDers who are other are making significantly more, like a lot more, than non ADHDers of color, right? If we look into the marital status here, same thing. Married people in general. Well, actually, I don't know if it really shows us those stats, so let me not say that. But we see that married. Oh, actually, it does show that. Okay, I was right. I was on the right page. So we got married versus non-married. So like the non-married neurotypicals make less than, so that non-married neurotypicals, we got 44,555. They're making like 20,000 less than their married counterparts. And then we still see that reflected in the ADHD population with non-married individuals making significantly less than married individuals. I want to say a caveat to this is we see this data, but it's reflected by law, right? So, your incomes are only considered joint or together, or you can choose to file joint when you are married. So that gives you like a legal kind of protection. So, a lot of people aren't getting married now, or that looks a lot different of how we're navigating families. So I also just kind of want to note that having more than one income in a household, you're going to make more money. Obviously, that's not rocket science, but just still showing you here that, yeah, having more people in your household can improve your financial status, people who are contributing to the financial needs of that household. But still, ADHDers, married or not, are going to make less than non-ADHDers who are married or not. And then the last intersection here we have geographical location. So it's looking at urban, suburban, and rural areas. Again, the trend is if you're on the ADHD side here, the 35,000, the 51,000, the 39,000, you are making less than your counterparts, regardless of what geographical location you live in. And then in the urban part, I just kind of want to point this out to you. I really like to show this because one of the best predictors of outcome of what a person is how much wealth a person is likely to amass, one of the best predictors of that is the zip code that they were born in. Which is wild, because we talk about like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and, being self-made, getting out the mud. And of course, yes, outliers exist. And when you talk about the billions of people we have on this planet, like you might have a lot of outliers, right? Outliers exist, of course. But when we talk about getting rich, a lot of that, baby, that just depends on where the fuck you were born. You have no control over that. Yeah. So I just really love this chart to really look at the intersections. I'm all about intersectionality. And also it still shows the theme that neurodivergent people struggle in the workplace and their household income is less by result. So there you have it. I gave you a couple of research articles. I'll definitely link the bibliographies or whatever they're called in the show notes, the references. Yeah, I think these were pretty good examples to really reflect the challenges that we as neurodivergent adults face in the workforce. So yeah, let's roll on into the season. I'm going to just really start to share my own experiences with you, starting from like my first job as a little baby, all the way up into where I'm at now. And then I got some interviews with other folks, other neurodivergent adults sprinkled in between. So thank you for coming back. Thank you for being here. Thank you for clicking on this. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.